You are here for configuring custom policies in Skype for Business Online and Microsoft Teams. It is a 400-level session. We are going to bore you to tears with about 20 minutes of PowerShell. So if you thought this was just going to be all entertaining, there's the door. That said, myself, Christian Burke, and Martin Renus, I will introduce myself next. I am a member. We are both members of the, okay, here comes the acronym. We are in the Skype and Teams Engineering, Customer Experience and Deployment team, underneath the Customer Lifecycle Services team, underneath Office 365 umbrella. Whew. There it is. I've been at Microsoft for a very short 3 years. Most of my coworkers have been here for 5, 10, 15, 20. I've always been a Microsoft guy and so on. I've always been a nerd, and I will proclaim that for the rest of my life. If you didn't notice the accent, I live in Barcelona. And although I'm really only there about 6 to 8 days a month, and the rest of the time I'm in planes, trains, and automobiles, and hotels, and everything else. And they all love me. And oh yeah, there you go. That's my daughter on the top right-hand corner. She's almost as tall as I am.
Which is not that hard.
And she's heading off to college. I just put her in college this summer. And yeah, Barcelona, Spain is a good friend of mine on the bottom right-hand corner. That's the Tomatina Festival. And with that,
thank you. So what about me? Martin Renus, same team as Christian. Not going to repeat this ginormous long name. Part of the Skype product group in Microsoft for about 5 years. Same as Christian, IT pro for quite a while. Did LCS, OCS, Lync, Skype, Teams, whatever UC type solution we have to offer. A lot of my focus and work is around user experience, call quality dashboard, those type of things. And that's kind of why I'm here. I'm living with my family, 3 daughters, my wife, in Munich or close to Munich in a small city, small village called Maisach. The fun fact about that is that obviously we are in Bavaria, and obviously we have our own brewery in our small village with 5,000 people, because that's all you really need, right?
Yeah. By the way, we have a blogger in the midst. He's right here in the front row. We did a unique opportunity this year, and we took about 15, 20 different sessions, and we put a blogger here putting out content. And this is him. He's right there. Yeah, exactly. So stand up and show everyone yourself. We're on stage. At least stand up for a second. This is Rom. Say hi, Rom. There we go. So we actually made a little, so you can follow along the blog or after or whatever. We made a little short URL out of it too. And then that's his Twitter handle down below. That's his Twitter page. So you can go from there. So this is all being, well, he's furiously typing right now. So, okay, moving on. Let's talk about the agenda. In all seriousness, we're going to do some deep dive into custom policies. I'm just going to kind of set the stage with a case study and talk to you. What I didn't do is what we do every day. Other than acting like idiots up on stage like this, we're actually in some of our big customers. We take key customers and we drive them to success with Skype for Business, online, and now with Teams. We are primarily focused on cloud voice, so we take all the real-time media ones, the really hard ones, and we make them work really, really well. So there's a handful of case studies out there in the Skype Operations Framework, and now it's called Practical Guidance for Cloud Voice.
That's it.
And in there, Pogo Covo. That's what we came up with. But a lot of those case studies are projects we worked on. So if you go out there and you look for Marks & Spencer or Equinix, they're in the... oh, no, they're not up there yet. Sorry. Oops. You can see some of the work we've done. But we'll continue on with, that's out of order, with Skype Operations Framework and custom policies. What did I do? Martin is going to take about 20 minutes and dig deep into PowerShell and show you how the policies work. We will then come back around and do applied custom policies. And I'm going to show you a little hacking project we did to hack basically the custom policy construct to make it do some really cool things. And it basically takes all the things that he's going to show you and it puts a real world example to it. And then we'll give you some resources. We'll make sure that we covered the big ticket items with some objectives and takeaways. And then we have the Q&A, aka quiz time, and you'll see why. So let's dig in. The what and why. Look, when we're out at our customers, the first thing we need to focus on is the user. You're all customers. You've all got 1 million users. If you're in IT org, you've got tons of users to make sure that they get the experience that you intend them to have. More importantly, you want them to really like the product that you're giving them. So I always use this thing, I want to use _, and I want them to put in the word Skype in there, okay? Now I'm gonna start crossing that out pretty soon, and I'm gonna start putting Teams over the top of it, but really, that's what this is all about. I wanna make sure that they're doing exactly that that's what they wanna use every single day. I don't want them to feel this is forced. I don't want them to have to use a product that they're not satisfied with so they can go use something else. I want them to want to use this product every day. And that means we need to focus all of our efforts on making sure that the user gets what they intend to have and what's going to work for them. So, I'm just showing a few examples up here. The mobile worker, the traditional desk phone fan, the power Skype user, the one that uses every bell and whistle, every feature, everything, and loves it and has no problems with it whatsoever. The executive that just wants this one thing that this person does to work, and his or her admin assistant to be able to do everything else, including setting their meetings and so on. We want all that to work the way they intend. There's the admin assistant. So, and I'm going to give you a quick little case study, and I'm going to talk about one that's exactly focused on those two, by the way. Why custom policies? Because when you just turn on the service and you give it to the users, there are going to be tons of users that it doesn't suit. There are going to be different personas that default experience is not what they need to be successful every day. You can also take some features out. You can streamline that user experience so that way it works for them just the way they need it. You can tune Skype also to suit other things like regional restrictions. Germany, we have to turn a lot of things off. Or there could be other challenges around legal requirements, labor requirements. We have GDPR coming. We have all kinds of these new acronyms that are showing up, and that means that for different places, for different people, we have to make the product do what it needs to do. In India, we can't just turn on PSTN calling plans. We can't turn on voice in the cloud unless it goes through certain ways, and we can tune this product to make sure it works for that class of users. So pretty straightforward. What are custom policies within Skype for Business Online? I'm going to get to the Teams page in a second. I'm going to make sure that we focus a lot on Teams throughout this, but I'll get to that in a minute. Preset configurations. Right now, the 4 key ones we really need to focus on are the client policy, aka CS client policy, the CS conferencing policy, the mobility policy, and the external access policy. Those are the 4 that are basically our bread and butter of how we deliver this user experience. By default, the difference between on-prem and the cloud, when we're on-prem, we can customize them all the way we want. In Office 365, they're pre-canned policies. Back in February, we launched the ability to customize these 4 policies, so it gave us a lot more flexibility than we had before. In the past, before February, you had to pick a policy from a list, and it had to closely match what it is you wanted your user experience to be. Now you get to go and you get to customize those, but we're going to really caution you on how much customization you want to do, and we'll show some of that to you in this session. As well, the default is assigned during the creation, depending on which switches you've set previously, before. And the admin portal also has a subset of settings, but we're going to also caution you that once you go down the PowerShell route and the customization, that web interface, the admin portal, is off limits because they collide with each other. And you can't use both. So once you go in PowerShell realm and you're all 400 level people here, that means you should be probably living in PowerShell already. The admin portal becomes off limits. You're probably not there anyway, so we're good. So as for teams, going forward, everyone's been asking me, what are we going to be able to do as far as customization of teams? Right now, we don't have anything, and you are correct. You actually have a few things that are showing up. They're really focusing hard on the web interface, but there will always be this PowerShell construct underneath. So it will honor the Skype for Business Online PSTN conferencing and calling plans, the per user settings. There are going to be more user level policies to be released in the future. I'm going to say this at the end, but I'll say it now. If you want detailed roadmap, you got to wait until about mid-October or so. So I'm sure you've probably heard that perhaps yet. And that is in October, we're going to have it all figured out. We'll be able to send it out. Okay? So hang tight on that. Team-specific policies will also be released because Skype for Business Online does not do everything that Teams does. And you'll be able to manage content, you'll be able to manage apps and bots and all those other things in policies as well. It will also support full customization of all those exposed settings. But here's those are the three ones you're going to want to need to focus on right now. There are going to be more coming, but right now that's the Teams interop policy, and that really has to do with what's between Skype and Teams. It's going to show you a little bit of that. The Teams meeting policy, which is essentially the conferencing policy in Skype for Business Online. And then the Teams calling policy, which is madly under development right now, or in development. And that's going to give you all those call controls and all the PSTN features and things like that. That said, I'm going to do a quick case study. And how are we doing on time? We're doing pretty good. Oh, yeah, 30 seconds. Cool. All right. So I just want to set the stage real quick. This was a customer of ours. It is a media publishing company out of New York, 22,000 users. This is a pretty normal customer of ours. They're basically 6 different business units. They were a mix of Office 365, E3, and E5. They have a total of about 20,000 Skype for Business Online users, and they use it, okay? They don't use it a whole heck of a lot, but they use it. A little over 1 million E5 minutes a month. That's decent for 20,000 users. I have some that are using 5 times that, and they're a quarter of the size. It's okay, but we wanted to make that go better, and we couldn't figure out what was going on. So they have many competitive products. They allow their users to bring in Slack and all the other competitors and out there, and those things grow like a weed, and they kind of let them have at it a little bit. They let the creative types be creative types. So it's kind of a challenging environment to try and get one product to work really well, especially if it's struggling in the environment. And by the way, they did have a lot of traditional handset reliant users, so they kind of like their phones. So they decided, a brilliant idea, to just go ahead and turn on Skype for all their users and see what happens. And it didn't go so well. They really had no notion of customizing user experience. Whether or not it worked on the network and they had failures and so on, people were just confused as all heck how to just make stuff happen. They kept wanting to relate to what they had in the past and tried to make it work with what they have right now. So, how do I just set a conference and give someone a dial-in phone number and just have it work, right? And so there was just a ton of user confusion and frustration, and it just became this IT admin support desk exercise, and that's really not where it belonged because the users didn't get what they needed in the first place. And so essentially their deployment was a mess. Skype just got a really bad name because in the end, all the user thinks is that this thing doesn't work for me, so I hate it, right? And now we had to rewind the clock and start all over, and we had to back up. And we had to, instead of boiling this up through IT, we had to go out executive sponsorship. We had to go find a C-level and go talk to them and figure out whether we wanted to take this seriously and do it or not. We had to go find the money. We had to go find devices, headsets, and all these things. We had to get all that stuff out of the way first. And he says, okay, if you can do all that, I'll give you the product, but I'm only going to give you some people first. So he gave us the hardest ones. He gave us the executives and the executive admins. And so we went out and we did interviews. And we sat with them. We watched what they didn't like about the product, what they did like. We went through all of that stuff. By the way, we had already gone through a bunch of networking to get the environment ready. So we kind of had that out of the way. So this was really just about tuning the user experience. We captured those user personas to figure out exactly how they use the product, and then we went back and we created custom client and conferencing policies for each one of those users, or for those groups of users, pardon me. We tried to steer them into as few minutes as possible, so we used a little bit of a training exercise to get some people to use it in a different way to kind of fit a smaller or lesser amount of containers instead of making a policy for each individual user, right? We created those additional client policies for Rate My Call, which I'm going to show you what that means a little bit later. We applied the policies to the users. We queried. We checked to see if they worked. If they worked the way they wanted them, they were happy. We moved on. Sometimes they said, no, that's not quite what I meant. We went back. We tuned those policies till they were done. And most importantly, we captured user feedback every step of the way. And I'm going to show you again after the deep dive what we can do with custom policies and capturing user feedback. And it's a pretty cool project. So that was really the case study in action. That said, I'm going to hand this over to Martin for the next couple of sessions.
Isn't that the case? I thought you were doing this.
Oh, am I doing this?
Oh, I can.
Oh, yeah, of course I am. Yeah, of course I am. See how organized we are? Does that have my name on it? Okay, this is that Pogo Kovo. We don't know how to say, like, soft was really easy, and we don't know how to say practical guidance for cloud voice. So far all I can come up with is Pogo Kovo. That's all I got. Okay, so can I assume that most people are familiar with Skype Operations Framework? Yeah, show of hands? Yeah? Yeah, good, okay, that's good. You're way ahead of most. And that plan, deliver, and operate phase. I'm gonna show you essentially where custom policies fit within that plan, deliver, and operate phase, okay? So knowing we can skip past what SOF is and what practical guidance for Cloud Voice is, but here's custom policies. So in the planning phase, you already heard what we were talking about. We collect business and legal requirements. We put those into as few groups as possible to make sure that user experience is gonna be easily manageable, I should say. And like it says, limit it to a manageable number versus accommodating every requirement. This is going to be really key when we move into teams, because you're not necessarily going to use your old policies, and the less policies you have, the less you're going to have to migrate, because what you're going to do on this side is you're going to create a new set of policies in teams. And those policies you're going to try and map as closely as possible, and the less you have to do, the better and easy, the more organized, and the more problem-free the exercise is going to be. Define the naming standards so they support your business. So I went over to one customer, and one simple client policy was 6 characters long, and the next one was 38 characters long. And it made no sense. And you guys know, any governance around SharePoint and so on, your folder structure, your file structure, try and manage it and make the naming standards easy for you to identify so those IT admins can solve problems quickly, just visually when they need to. And they can tell when somebody's misconfigured, when they've been given the wrong policy, it's easier to see. Define operation standards. Remember that once you go into PowerShell, you're going to lose the admin portal GUI at least for Skype for Business, okay? And if so, you need to make sure that your IT admins and those operations are set so that way they can use that proper guidance and that they don't go and change something in the admin portal and then you have 1,800 users that just got a different experience the next morning or their PSTN calling stopped working. So you have to make sure all those processes are in place. Define those parameters and fields, how to identify those users as well, country business unit, how it is you're going to do it. If you have security groups already set up for all your users, that's a really great place to start. Make sure there's users in those containers, but you might have different functional units that aren't regionally based, that are based on how they work and what they do, what their role is, and so on. Then you have to go get it done. So this is how you start to build those policies. And we go through this exercise with every single one of them. So we sit down and we go get CS client policy and we go through every freaking attribute, okay? And we look at each one, and we sit there and go, do you need that? After we've identified these user personas, we say, how are you going to align that attribute to that user persona? And it's a half day to a day to 2-day exercise, depending on how many user personas they have. And we basically create all of those one-to-one for each one of those groups. Then we build those scripts, or we build the policies, and then we start to build the scripts that's going to help us deploy it in mass and in bulk and so on. We also have to incorporate that policy process into into your identity platform, if applicable, if you need to. As well, we have the policy assignment needs to also fit into that end user provisioning process. So if you have System Center or whatever else it is you're going to do, you have to create your automation around those. A gentleman asked me yesterday down at the expo, he says, I need to figure out how to apply a policy to a user, but I don't want to do it to a user, I wanted to do it to a group. I said, why don't you just do it to a security group, and you can just make that PowerShell policy work. He goes, yeah, but I don't want to have to do it myself. I'm like, well, then go ahead and automate it. So whatever automation tools you run, go ahead and build the scripts. Most of you people that are familiar with PowerShell, deep into it, you already know how to automate all your script processes. Build that into the end user provisioning process and make sure that they get the policies that they're meant to have. So every user is going to get 3 or 4 or 5 different policies based on what it is they're trying to do. And so you've got to go through all that in that phase. In the operate phase, we're going to focus on making sure the users got the policies that were intended and that those users are using the product like they wanted to. And if not, you got to go back and fix them and make them work, or you have to create a new policy for those users that didn't get the experience they intended. You have to establish that process for changing those settings. So you don't just go in, someone goes, oh man, I don't want video on my client. Or someone says, this person's not allowed to have video. Great, just go in and change the policy and disable video. You might have just blown out 1,800 users on video, and they thought they were going into a meeting, and they thought they were going to have video working, and now it's no longer there. And now the phones are lighting up. So establish a process for creating new ones too. You don't want 1 million policies. We want to limit them, and you really want to limit those that have access to creating new ones, and make sure that they're really well thought out, and make sure you're following the guidelines that you have, that you're reviewing the policies that you had before, and you're making sure that none of them, that you really do have to create a new one, and if you do, create it very, very minimally. Same thing for establishing a process for ongoing monitoring. You want to make sure everything's working. You want to make sure that nothing's being changed. You have to figure out, and if there's some sort of auditing you need to do periodically to make sure things stayed the way they were, that they were intended, then you have to do that. All right? So that said, now Martin's going to show you some cool stuff. And how are we doing on time?
Good.
We're doing right on. Good. Okay.
Thanks, Christian.
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to talk a bit about policy deep dive, do a little bit of PowerShell, show you, what the process is to modify those policies and how you can apply them, and a few tips and tricks that we learned while deploying those to large customers. So a few things, some basic commands here. As this is a Level 400 session, I'm kind of assume that you're familiar with those. So there's always this a new CSXX policy. There's a get, a set, and a remove policy to kind of modify those policies, create them, etc. And then there's also to apply a policy to a user. There's a grant CS mobility, CS conferencing policy, and you would specify the identity here to apply this to a user. Pretty straightforward and nothing really special here. There are a couple of things that are different from maybe Skype on-prem, if you're familiar with that I wanted to highlight here. The one is, and Christian touched on that already. By default, if you go into the admin portal, into the Skype for Business online admin portal, you can modify your users, and one of those options is in the options setting. You can enable audio and video, and enable recording and those type of things. And in the end, under the hood, this reflects in the system will select predefined policies that are available in the system. However, if you go into PowerShell and modify those settings, and create custom policies and apply custom policies to a user, what will happen is, and the right screenshot here shows you that I've applied my Ignite 2017 demo policy to that particular user, that the admin portal will remove all the settings here, because if we were to go into that user again, into the admin portal and change settings here, all my custom policies would be overridden, because each user can only have a single client policy assigned to him. So that's something to be aware, that once you enter the PowerShell land, you probably want to stay there and don't start using the admin portal again, because that, but in the end won't work for a lot of users. So with that, the deck has a couple of PowerShell commands, and this is a little bit more as a reference, and you can download this deck from the Ignite site later on. I'm going to do, pretty much the rest of my section here is going to be a demo and walking you through some of the things that you've done. So with that, let me switch over here to number, what was it, 6? There we go.
Hey, PowerShell.
PowerShell, there we go, right? 400 level, right? We're good with 400, we can go. All right, so
show too. I'm going to see.
I mean, the first thing really is that we want to connect to Skype for Business Online. So I'm going to ask for my credentials, enter my admin credentials here, and I mean, this should be pretty straightforward. That you get credentials, create a new online session, waiting for the internet to do its magic, connecting me, and then you're importing the session.
By the way, you'll notice that funny language there is German. So if you don't understand anything that's on the screen, it's by design.
Yeah, that's on purpose, right? That, But there's an easy thing how you can tell if the script works, because there's one rule in PowerShell: red is bad. If you see something red, I screwed something up. So as long as there's no red, we're good. So I've connected to Skype for Business Online. I've established my PowerShell session. So and when preparing this demo, I was thinking of, okay, what is the thing we wanted to do? So imagine, we went through, Christian and I went to a customer. We went through our exercise here, and we've identified a need for a specific persona for the IT guys. That they should not be using video on their mobile phone over data connection, over 3G, 4G connection, because they run around quite a bit. They don't always have Wi-Fi connection. They are on calls quite often, but the coverage is maybe not always that good. So we want to really disable video for them, except they are on Wi-Fi. So that's kind of our task. We have the IT personnel, a couple of hundred users maybe, and we want to turn off video over 3G or 4G data connection for them. So that's kind of the task here. So we've connected to Skype for Business Online PowerShell. So first we want to see if there is what are the type of policies that are available for us from a mobility standpoint. So what we're going to do here is mobility policy. Get CS mobility policy and do a format identity just to see what there is. And now what we're going to see here is that we have a list of policies that are available in my tenant. One thing to notice here, and this error message or this warning message is actually in English, so that just for Christian, so that he understands what I'm talking about. So it tells me that we're only seeing the custom policies and not the predefined policies, because there is like a longer list of predefined policies that the service or that we as Microsoft have created for you. We won't see them. If we want to see them, I need to include this parameter include subscription defaults, and then there will be a quite long list of predefined policies that you can assign, but you cannot do anything else with them. You can't modify them, you can't delete them or anything. So those are the policies that are available to me. That I can modify. Now the setting I'm interested in. So let's go into one of those policies. Let's see, as mobility policy. Let's take identity global, and let's review what this policy looked like. So there are a couple of different options, and as you go through your exercise and mapping those personas to your usage profiles and to the configuration. This is where you then start and identify and go line by line and see, okay, what are the options that we need to change? So that's really the thing here. In our case, what we're interested in is this require Wi-Fi for IP video. So for my IT personnel, I really want to make sure that this setting is set to true for them, so that we really have Wi-Fi, that Wi-Fi is being used whenever they're going a video on their mobile device. Now, but I only want to apply this to the IT personnel, so that's why I don't want to modify the global policy, but create a new custom policy that I then will apply to my IT persons. So how am I going to do that? So the first thing is that we need to create a policy. So it's really nothing more than a new CS mobility policy. We're going to call it Ignite 2017 Demo 1. And we're going to do a require Wi-Fi for IP video and set it to true. Maybe I should spell true correct, that might help. So I'm now creating a new policy object. I'm doing actually essentially two things. I'm creating this policy object named Ignite 2017 Demo 1, and I've also modified a setting here. Why did I set this, include the setting already? Well, there are a couple of limitations based on how the service is built. And one limitation is that some of the settings that are available here can only be changed whenever you create a policy. Some of them can be changed later on, but a subset of settings can only be created at the time when you create this policy. So that's the first thing that I'd like to take away from here, is that whenever you go through this exercise, be aware of what is my combination of settings that I want to have, and make sure that you apply them right away when creating this policy, because otherwise you might end up in a situation that you have to delete this policy and recreate it again, because you might not be able to change them. So that's the first thing that we've done here. We've created our policy. And we see that require Wi-Fi for IP video is now set to true. So whenever this policy is applied to a user and this user signs it into his mobile device, he will only be able to use video whenever he's connected to Wi-Fi. That's good. So the next thing is that I need to assign this policy to a user. So I'm going to start with a single user here and go into this mass enablement and some of the lessons learned here later on. So we're going to see, we're going to do get CS online user. I'm going to do my test user here, my UC-lab.de, and we're going to do a format list, zip address, and mobility policy, just to see what his configuration is right now. And right now we see that this user, Martin and my UC-lab.de, is configured with a mobility policy of test. So, and that's the thing that we want to modify. So what I now could do is, really just run a ground CS mobility policy and apply to the user. Yeah, kind of basic. Let's do this. Works fine if it's just a single user. But we were talking about we want to do more with that. But just, for the sake of the argument, let's do this. Mobility policy, policy name. I'm going to include the full name here, Ignite 2017 Demo 1. And we're going to apply this to Martin at myuclab.de. So one thing here to be aware of is I've just created this policy, like maybe a minute or two ago. It's likely that this command will fail right now because there is some replication delay, 5 to 10 minutes that it might take before I can apply this policy. So let's see. Remember, red is bad. There we go. So that doesn't work. But I've created another policy, Ignite Demo 2, which has the setting we're interested in. Ignite 2017 Demo 2, which has our setting we're interested in. And if I'm now going to do the same command again, I'm going to apply my Demo 2. And we're going to do this again. Now we can see that my test user is configured for this particular setting. And now what I would do is I would sign in with this test user and verify that my replication has finished, which is obviously not the case yet. Again, may take a few minutes for the setting to be effective. I will then sign in with my test user on this device and first make sure that the setting has the desired outcome before I start with the mass rollout to be sure that I'm actually affecting the change I'm interested in. So that's great. We've done this for a single user, kind of nice. But what about if you want to do this to hundreds or thousands of users? What are the things that we've learned and that I want you to be aware of? So for that, let me open my second PowerShell here and sign in here as well. So I want to show you a couple of things. So I'm going to sign in here. Hopefully I'm not going to mistype my password. So now we have two sessions opened here because I wanted to compare or show you two different things here. So what we're going to now do, as soon as the session has connected, we're going to retrieve the users and store them in a variable so that we can then further process, continue with our process here. So the first thing is we just want to do, we want to find all users that are part where the department is set to IT, because again, we wanted to apply those settings to users in the IT. So what we've done initially is something like get CS online user and then do a pipe into a where object and to find those users we're interested in. So that would be something like this. But if we do this with the where object, we might run into issues that it just takes quite a lot of time, consumes a lot of resource, a lot of memory, and we're working with customers that have really large Skype for Business deployments or really large Azure Active Directory instances. We learned that using the where object is not quite efficient, but using the filter object or the filter parameter is actually much better. So what I'm going to do here is just make sure that I don't copy the very last item here. The left one is using the where object, and the right one is using a filter. I'm going to talk through this in a second. So the left PowerShell window is using a get CS online user, and then we're doing a pipe into where, and using a searching for users where department equals IT and where they are enabled. And on the right-hand side, it looks pretty similar, but there we are using the filter commandlet, the filter parameter, which is part of the get CS online commandlet itself. In the end, it should return the same amount of users. So let's see what the difference is. So I've started them at the same time. And what we should see is that the right window is much faster and returns the user count pretty soon. So the right window is already completed. We have all of them, while the left window is still going through all of the identities and doing the comparison, etc. So you can see that that there's like a 50 to 100% time increase when using this filter parameter. So that's the one thing I'd like you to take away from, or the next thing I'd like you to take away from the session is whenever you're doing scripting and you have to deal with filtering user objects or doing any kind of filtering or scoping, please use the -filter command wherever this is available, or the -filter parameter for commandlets, because that is much more efficient and will make all of the scripting much faster. So this is good. Now, if we go in here, we should see that .users count. We have 989 users in the IT department because my lab is quite big. I need 1,000 IT guys running my lab, more or less. So now, before we start enabling all of those, applying these policies to all of them, I might want to do some testing and want to make sure that my script actually works. So how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to do the same thing again with the, let me get rid of that one here and make that bigger. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing again, but add additional parameter, which is result size. So what that is doing is I'm running the same command. Wait, I'm running the same command and doing a users equals with a parameter of result set dash result set 1, so that I'm only returning the very first user that is part of this result set, which is quite useful if I'm doing some, if I'm writing a script and just want to test my parameter or my thing here. So I'm going to do a .users, format table, user principal name. We see that this this array has only a single user and not like our 989 users that we have previously. So what I would do is really nothing more than using my .users and pipe them into a grant CS mobility session, grant CS mobility policy, specify the policy name, which is Ignite 2017 Demo 2. And the policy will be applied to all users in that array. So that's kind of the quick walkthrough how you would do all of this in PowerShell. And as you can see, even though it's quite a large number of users we need to go through, it should be pretty straightforward from a process perspective to actually get this job done.
Now, how long will that take?
How long will it take?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
989 users versus 1.
Good question. So it kind of depends on your speed of your internet connectivity, etc. But on average, I think what we've seen so far is that in applying a single, performing a single grant operations might take 1 to 2 seconds. So if you're having 10,000s of users, consider that. Make sure that you time this and don't expect that you can make changes to 10,000 of users within an hour or two. That might not work out. If you have those large batches of users and you expect that you need those changes again and again and again and again, you probably want to think about splitting out those user groups with multiple machines. Make sure that you have enough memory because PowerShell, especially if you're doing large-scale operations, PowerShell might consume considerable amount of memory and maybe run different instances of PowerShell. A single admin account can sign into 4 PowerShell sessions at the same time. So you can spin up 4 instances at the same time to speed up mass enablements or mass policy changes if needed. So that's great. That's all the how you would go through the process of defining a policy and applying them. That's all Skype for Business. Now, what about Teams? So we are starting to introduce the first PowerShell commandlets and policies for Teams. And one of them is the interrupt policy. So if we do, again, in the same Skype for Business PowerShell session, and in the same Skype for Business PowerShell session is where all the Teams commandlets will show up. So what we have here is a Teams interop policy. And let's just see what type of policies we have. So there are quite a number of different policy objects available already for Teams interop. So let's see what those policy what such a policy looks like.
So for those of you that were doubting whether Teams would have policies or not, I know some people have warned us or had that concern before. This is real code in real tenants right now.
Sure, totally. So, my own tenant, it's nothing, that is fake here or no special anything. It's really just the first set of policies that show up here, and using the interop policy, I can modify what's the behavior of user in Skype and in Teams. What's my chat, my default chat client, what's my default calling client, and those type of things can be modified through those policies already. So with that, I think I'm kind of done with my PowerShell session here. Let me switch back to these slides. So these slides have a couple of things here where we are. So multiple sessions, tips and tricks. Yeah, I think we've done all of that. So again, the deck has like, maybe 10 or 8 slides where we're going through all of those details. But again, not going to go through all of them because we've just done the demo of that. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Christian again.
I was worried that Martin was going to cut into our quiz time because for all of you that are sticking around, we have some prizes for those that are allowed to have prizes. So stick around. You'll like it. All right, so custom policies. And luckily we have Mr. Jason Shave in the audience too, who is one of our team members who wrote some of the code in this. And this is pretty cool. So we've had, let me back up. For all of you that know Call Quality Dashboard and Call Analytics, capturing data on actual events that happened, those are two of the primary mechanisms that you use. We also like to use the Microsoft Skype for Business network assessment tool. We actually think that works really, really well. And it's just like this little engine that pulls a lot of good data on whether a call is going to work or not, because it's an actual call for 17 seconds, right? At the same time, that's only telling half the story. So what we thought would be really interesting, this little pet project of mine, we thought it would be great to capture this rate my call thing. I'm sure you've seen this before, all of you, if you're using Skype for Business online, even on-prem. Anybody know how often it shows up when you're using it by default? Yeah, what is it? That's the wrong answer, but 10 was right, 10%. Every 10th call, you get this by default. And by the way, we're hoarding this data. It's for us, for Microsoft, to use as whether they're making changes that are affecting user behavior and whether people like it or not. So essentially, it's a data gathering tool for us to see whether things are working or not, generally speaking. Okay? But keep in mind that Rate My Call captures user feedback at the time of service, and it's really, really valuable. NPS, if you're familiar with Net Promoter Score, you get bombarded by that all the time through all kinds of products that you buy and services that you consume. That captures your general sentiment, but this actually captures at the time of service. So when does it happen? Immediately after your call, right? So every 10th time you get it. So wouldn't it be cool if we could crank this up a little bit, and let's say for a short period of time when we're deploying a part of the Skype service to the user population, we could turn on 100% of the time. And we could also open up that comment box so we could say, hey, users, we want to know how you feel about what we're doing here, okay? So this is kind of what we did. We basically built this program around this, and we basically picked a control group. So how many users are we going to turn on PST conferencing this week? Right? So we grab that control group. Then what we basically do is we increase the frequency for a period of time. We enable the comment box. We control how long we're going to bother or nuisance these users with it 100% of the time. But we're going to base that duration on informing the users first. They're going to know about this, and we're going to ask them to participate. We're going to ask them to rate it. We're going to give them that rating system right up above in the email that we're going to send out. And we're going to say, look, we don't want, just because you're in a bad mood today, to be hitting 1 stars on everything. We actually want you to give us honest feedback because we care about how you feel about this product. We want it to work well for you, and we want you to fill in, I want to use Skype as the word. And so this is how we're going to figure out how it's working for you. But we're going to go a little bit further than that. So we basically create custom policies. Okay, so every client policy you have already comes with the default of 10%. So we create another policy for every single one you have, one for 100% and one for 50%. And we enable the comment box. Okay. By the way, I'll caution you on the next slide on some functionality in here. But basically what that's saying is then we create a program that says for the first month, generally speaking, we're going to turn it on at 100%. In months 2 and 3, we're going to dial it back to 50 because we don't need to know as much about you now than we did before. And after the 3rd month, we're going to just put it back to the default. We've gotten what we needed out of you, and within that 90 days, we will have you where you need to be using the product just like you wanted to. Okay? But essentially, we're now capturing that user feedback right alongside telemetry and real data. So a couple quick comments, and I'm going to show you some of the results. So it's not about annoying everybody. It's about capturing the user feedback. So you really need to focus on messaging this to them. Okay? And within those client policy attributes, turns out those are not editable. We found out when we tried to hack this. So at your own risk, if you have a Premier agreement, you can try and open up a ticket. Go ahead and pre-create those policies, open a ticket, and see if they'll change them for you. Okay? I'm afraid to say on this microphone whether they're going to do it or not, so I won't. But let's say it worked for you and all was going well, then you would basically message out to your users through that list, the instructions that I showed, and then you're going to use Jason's really cool, super cool guy call data script, and you can go to the PowerShell gallery.
What's that for an AKMS URL? What's the point with that URL? Why is that?
I'm sorry?
Jason Spirit. Why does it say Jason Spirit?
Oh, yeah, Jason. Can you stand up and show everyone your really cool beard? This is Jason and his beard. That's right. So we created a quick little URL with homage to our good friend's beard. But that's actually the PowerShell script underneath, too. That can go ahead and show you what they look like. But actually, this is the output. And in the output is basically the spreadsheet and a series of spreadsheets. But what we basically did was we took the quality of experience data out of this QoE cube, and he aligned that with user feedback. So he's capturing all this really cool stuff. And I don't want to get into the hyper detail. You can see the deck later, and you can actually go out and you can run the script yourself, and you can play with it. But essentially, feedback given, feedback total, feedback percentage. So you get to find out now how many people, even though they got it 100%, how often they replied. And when they applied, what did they typically reply with? Were they only replying when they were complaining, or were they also giving you good feedback? But there's 3 records here, and there's basically 2 pages of content that I'm just showing here. But this is a bunch of the stuff that Jason, he basically picked a bunch of attributes in the QoE cube that he thought was important for us to go and touch users. But the most important thing here is unlike CQD and call analytics, well, not like call analytics, unlike CQD, we actually know who did it and what they replied and what the environmental conditions were when they did it. So then we can go and tap them on the shoulder. One of our customers did this as their deployment exercise. They had actually Avanade. If you look in the Marks & Spencer case study, we did this with them. And they took 10 floor walkers every single day. Every night they ran this script up against all the users that they deployed. And every morning they reviewed the data and they went and tapped 50 to 100 people on the shoulder. And they said, hey, I noticed that you gave a 1 star yesterday on this call. Can you tell me what happened? Can you also explain to me why it is you have a headset plugged in, but you were using your PC mic and speakers? Did you also know that the call was great for you, but the person on the other end was driving in their car using the mobile client over 3G doing 80 miles an hour down the freeway, and they were the ones that was actually having the bad call and not you. But what you experienced was a perfect call. You just didn't like what you heard on the other end, and that's why you gave it a 1 star. Or you're just having a really bad day and you gave it a 1 star, right? But what it really did was it helped our users understand what was going on. They felt loved, they felt included in the solution, and they were left feeling much more positive, and the NPS scores showed it. And in the end, we have this thing called time to value, and that's super, super, super important to us. And for us, we want to get our users up and running as quickly as possible, and we want them to be there with high success, great quality, and high reliability. And this is one of those tools that gets it done. Hi, Ben. We did this over at another customer as well, Atkins Global. I think we have their case study published. And we did this. He's from Modality. And we did the exact same exercise over there. And they had very much success. And now their goal was after they deployed the first 1,000, they're going to deploy another 19,000 users to the cloud with full enterprise voice in 3 months. They're going to try and get it done in just 3 months. So it shows that when you get confidence from your users, you get happiness from your users, it works. But I'm not really here to sell this. What I'm really here to tell you is this is some ways you can think outside the box with custom policies and how you can do things you didn't really know you could do, create campaigns, create different ways of capturing information or different ways of affecting your user population to get them to really high quality and high reliability. Great quality, high reliability, okay? So that said, Martin is going to talk about what we're going to be doing next with Teams, some of it.
Thanks, Christian. Sure. So, seeing what we can do in Skype for Business today, and for me, the most important element out of here is not so much this PowerShell, as much as I love it, but more about the process that you need to go through. Identify the personas that you have, identify the settings that you need, implement them, and then make sure that their users are happy. And guess what? The same concept applies when we think about Teams. We will have similar type of controls and Teams available for you, and you can carry forward the same process and maybe even the same work that you've done with your users. Talking about Teams, what is coming here? So the one thing that you might have heard throughout Ignite already a couple of times is that Teams allows us to innovate much faster, and that we are able to deliver features much faster based on the technology stack used underneath. And one of those things will actually light up in the administration area. There's been a great session earlier this week talking about the updated admin experience and a couple of things that I wanted to highlight here. On the one side is that we are working on enabling a true RBAC type or a role-based access control type-based solution into Skype for Business and team workloads, similar that we have it for other Office 365 workloads, so that you can grant admin permissions to a particular subset of users only, or tailor what they're allowed to do. And there's also the concept of administrative units and group administration that will allow you in the future to administer teams and apply those policies in a simpler way, so that you define, I have an office in New York, and however you define this office in New York, maybe based on ID attributes, maybe on group membership, some form to group those users, and you will then be able to apply policies and settings to this group of users. So that's a thing that is coming in the admin UI. And this might look a bit like this. So that's taken out of one of those other sessions that we had. Similar, a few other things where we have meeting policies, and we see how many users are using this meeting policy, how many people have this meeting policy been applied to, and take it from there, edit the settings as needed, and those type of things will light up in the admin portal. So you can certainly do this all through PowerShell, but it also gives a nice way into doing some of those daily administration tasks in the modern portal in the future.
Yeah, just one comment on that. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Woo. What's important to understand with this is that there is a significant effort to improve the admin portal experience and to make that the single place you go, even if you've got tens or hundreds of thousands of users, that you can actually use the admin portal, not just for small business, but for great big, huge, large enterprises. So you're going to see this massive effort throughout the Office 365 admin portal all up, and as well in Teams, that the interface design is going to be there to support any size company you've got. That said, there's still PowerShell as that substrate underneath, so it'll be up to you to decide what. Okay.
Sure. So, and like Christian said, this will also include the ability to not just apply policies to a subset of users or groups of users, but also modify those settings right in the portal so that they don't have to go to PowerShell. Again, PowerShell is an option, but we really want to get to a place where it is just another option and not the default whenever you want to do some custom config. With that, I think I'm going to hand over to you again, Christian. Okay. What's next?
So,
is there anything next?
There is some next.
Really?
We'll do some housekeeping real quick, and then we'll get into
fun.
Some fun games, some giveaways. Real quick, session resources. There are a handful of blog articles on Skype for Business Online and custom policies. They're there, and if you grab the deck, you'll be able to click on that link instead of trying to memorize those things. The slides that you saw in that last section were from Manage All Your Communications Workloads in Office 365 by Jamie Stark and Ori. So you can look that one up, BRK4004, and watch it at your leisure. I spoke about the Teams roadmap already, and the policy details, or at least some of those features, should start appearing in the roadmap deck as of October. So keep an eye out for that. What else do I have? So real quickly, hopefully at the end of this session, you were better able to understand how customizing that user experience in Skype for Business Online and Teams works for you, how it's going to start working for you in Teams, how it already works for you in Skype for Business Online. As well, figuring out how to deploy custom policies for your users as a customer, and whether you're a small customer or whether you're a small business or whether you're a large enterprise, it's all the same. And also, most importantly, making sure that when you are tuning those policies to support your use cases, and that you go through those user persona exercises and make sure your users get the experience they intended and that you intended them to have. And with that, we're going to do a quick evaluate. Do not forget to evaluate the session. And to ensure that we get high marks, we're going to go ahead and we're going to play a little game. And we have some giveaways, and it's all going to be around. We're going to play a little game called Stump the Nerd. All right? So Stump the Nerd is another way of saying Q&A. But in this case, if we like your questions, Martin brought from Germany 2 beer steins. And I brought from Barcelona 3 FC Barcelona footballs. And if you're a Madrid fan, you need not ask any questions. And for those that have an 8 to 10-year-old child, I brought one as a final question. This is the real deal. I haven't figured out a way how to expense this yet. So it's out of my pocket. But that's the real deal. Okay? No, I didn't get him to sign it, but that's a good jersey. So this is for an 8 to 10-year-old, all right? So that said, we are very restricted. In all seriousness, we are restricted from giving away gifts. And if any of you work for an organization, AKA a government, or something like that, that precludes you from getting a gift, you are welcome to ask the question, but we are not going to pick you as a gift receipt, okay? But you'll need to identify yourself. We don't want to prevent you from asking any questions, but we absolutely want anyone to have prizes. So the way we're doing this is, if you ask us a question that we can't answer, you get yourself a prize. And it has to be Skype or Teams related, please. Okay? If you also ask a question that we think is really, really valuable, we will also offer a prize. But we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 gifts. So have at it. Game on.
Please.
Oh, and look at that. Some are right next to the microphone already. Okay, so Robin, first question. This better be good. This counts.
So this is kind of related to CX call data, so I'm excited Jason's here.
Okay.
We're trying to do kind of the example you said. I want to start data mining and setting up a whole scripting of automating responding to our users with best practices and asking them different questions and trying to get the help desk then involved.
Yep.
So right now, I know using it, I'm going to turn on the feedback, so I get the feedback information 100% of the time in the short term. But CX call data will show failed calls. Is there any way to edit that to get it to show what Microsoft considers a poor call and calls it poor in the call analytics?
Yes, the answer is you have not stumped the nerd, but it is a very good question. JSON script is an open PowerShell script. You can monkey with it any which way you want. In fact, you can just call the guy. I'm going to give you his mobile phone, and you can ask him to do it for you, because he sits around and does nothing but waits for people to call and edit that script. On the other hand, He's very passionate about it, and I know if there's something that's really valuable that he think would like to go into the script, he'll be happy to do it for you, I'm sure. So, knowing who he is. And for that, we are going to say that was a good question.
Oh, can I'm a diehard Liverpool fan. Can I have
Oh, that is brilliant. Coutinho looks pretty good. But you know what? Coutinho looks, that hurt. Well, you can drink whatever you want out of that thing. I hope it's not beer. All right, next question. You miss.
So I have a couple, two questions. One is...
You only get one prize.
That's fine.
Okay.
One is, so we're running PowerShell scripts and we were cutting over people to the PSTN audio for Skype. However, our user base is huge. What do you use to keep the session from timing out? So that was my first question.
I think that's a thing that Jason can answer. I mean, he is working to some of that.
Yes, import the session for Skype.
Are you running the module that these guys are talking about, the CXD call data module?
Yes, the CS client.
Yeah, so just update it to the latest version. It doesn't time out anymore.
Oh, update to the latest version. Okay.
We brought a ringer, folks.
Cool. Yeah,
We brought a ringer.
You did.
That's still a good question because we show that you're actually using the stuff that we're playing with. Barcelona?
Sure.
There it is.
Thank you so much.
You are welcome. I'm going to go to the back and I'm going to come back to you three guys. Back there? No, that's you.
So in the user policies, in the user objects, there's a little attribute that has to do with your conferencing ID, and setting it has absolutely no effect whatsoever. You can set it all day and night, and it will not do anything for you. So the question is there a plan at some point in the future to add a policy setting that will allow us to select on a user-by-user basis whether they have dynamic conference IDs or static conference IDs? This is
You did not stump the nerd.
This is the single most asked question I get from my user base.
I know it. So we've been through that debate day in and day out, and being able to be able to set a dynamic or a static conference ID by user, or by group, or by whatever. And that feedback is known and it's well received, and we've had many debates going back and forth on what to do. That conference ID, that little line that's in that code, I am pretty sure was somebody's little experiment on how to do it. Jason knows very specifically because we actually played with that for a couple of days to see what the heck it did, because we couldn't get anyone to tell us exactly what it was. So we kind of monkeyed with it, and we found that it actually at the time worked. But it was very, what we found is we found another creative way to actually create, we have a workaround for static conference IDs that we've actually given to our customers on how to do it. Yeah, this is funny. I'm so afraid to be speaking into this microphone right now. but I'm going to say it anyway. What we do is, because those that want static conference IDs tend to be admins and things like that, and they don't mind doing a little extra cutting and pasting. What we do is we just create like a recurring meeting that's about 5 years long. Happens once a year for 5 years. And that gives you a static conference ID and a static URL for 5 years and 2 weeks.
The only issue with that is that whenever you use that, you kind of lose the join button in some of these Skype clients, because the clients depend on some extra MAPI properties that might not be there. So that's in a scenario when you really heavily using
a workaround.
A workaround for heavy PSTN dynon that when you need a static PSTN dynon bridge, that might be an option.
So that was just to get us there, but I am under the impression that that's being taken very seriously, and that it is possible that you'll see the ability to have either in the future. And I honestly don't know. I'm not sure who has a better answer than that for right now. Okay.
I can't say.
Okay.
Please,
what do you want? That was a really good one.
Please more emphatically about that feature though. Take that to the product group, guys.
We know.
Please.
No, we're there. Which one would you like? Oh, there we go. Okay, here it comes.
Uh-oh.
Oh, jeez.
Oh.
That was an underhand. Yeah, that was horrible. What a fail. I didn't want to overhand it and bean someone in the forehead. Okay, next question. We're down to 3. And look, we have 3. We have 2 more. Okay. Okay, we're going for you first. Go ahead. Oh, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Real quickly, which one of you has an 8 to 10-year-old kid?
I got a 25-year-old kid.
You have a what?
A 25-year-old kid that loves Barcelona.
A 45-year-old kid?
25-year-old kid that loves Barcelona.
Okay. All right. Okay. That's close. All right. Next question. This is never going to fit a 25-year-old, by the way. Just saying.
I have an 8-year-old, but he probably wouldn't care about soccer.
Yeah.
I really want to know how that tomatina was, actually.
Oh, what tomatina was?
Yeah.
It's a tomato festival.
No, I know what it is. I wondered how it was. It looked like a lot of fun.
It was one of the one of the greatest times I've had, one of the greatest 45 minutes I've had. Like, it's literally, if you're down at the bottom of one of the streets, it comes up to your knees in tomatoes, in tomato sauce. It just flows down the street. And you're down here, and all you're doing is this for like 5 minutes going, and you're just showering tomatoes in the air. And it's such a great time. I don't know why it's such a great time, but it's such a great time. Could be the pre-partying and the post-partying, but it's really fun in between.
It just looked like a lot of fun.
It
All
really
right,
is.
For the real question, though, last week I had done some playing around with the custom policies because I have a customer that was interested in in configuring smart contacts.
Okay.
That feature in Skype for Business Online,
Okay.
where it automatically populates contacts at first logon to Skype.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably familiar with it. By default, it automatically also turns on tagging of status alerts for all of those contacts, which drives people crazy because if they have 10, 20, 50 new contacts, it automatically starts, first-time users, it's like alerting them left and right. There's guidance online for disabling that feature, which apparently does not work for Skype for Business Online custom policies. Apparently it only works on-prem. Just wondering if that's going to change.
I believe we need to, we have a winner. We've been stumped. Carolyn, do you have an answer to that? Jason, do you have an answer to that? What's that? Oh yeah, that's the answer. We're going to be fixing that in Teams. I forgot. You're right, Ben. That's a really good answer. Yeah, that's our fallback.
Okay.
I don't have the answer, but do me a favor. Stay after class, and I'll get your name, and we'll see if we can find an answer. Okay? We know peeps. Okay? All right, what do you want? You stumped the nerd. Did you say you had a kid?
I have an 8-year-old. Sure. Why not?
You get yourself, your kid. The 8-year-old needs to swear to Barca and against everything Real Madrid. There's no Ronaldo in the house, right? And the kid's name isn't Ronaldo, is it?
No. Decidedly not.
You win yourself a messy jersey. All right. Now we have.
You have to invite us to Madrid.
What's that?
You have to invite us, though, to Madrid. So.
Match won by Messi.
Okay, let's go. We're going to go around a couple back there.
So when working with a hybrid, when working with a hybrid deployment, so you got the on-prem and you got the cloud policies, would you recommend waiting at least a few hours after migrating a user to the cloud before implementing a custom policy?
No, I don't think there's a reason to wait. I mean, there is some initial sync that needs to happen, but that's more like after the user has been created on-prem. So if it's like you have a new user, a new employee, the person shows up in the morning, you haven't created the account, create it on-prem, sync it up, and then you might want to wait an hour or two for all the initial sync to happen. But if the account has been there already and it's just a matter of you've moved them over, I don't see a reason to apply any extra delay or extra wait time. As soon as the user is provisioned and all the provisioning is completed, which again may take 5-10 minutes maybe, after that point, I don't see a reason why you would want to wait any longer.
Okay, so I was talking, and the theory is immediately after executing the move, being able to execute another policy change in PowerShell right after in the same session. So it sounds like it'd be better to wait at least maybe an hour just to be safe?
Yeah, I mean the only thing that I can think of is really you move the user, and then you need to wait for provisioning to complete. And in SOF, we have a user enablement script that has a lot of logic in there to check the enablement status. And once that is completed, once all the provisioning has completed, you can continue. That's really the only thing you need to wait for. And I wouldn't tie it to a time, but really check for the provisioning status, because that might be just a minute or two.
Yeah. And one other point, we've got the same problem as the other guy that was just back here about the fact of the changing numbers. And it would be nice if there was some way, either with PowerShell, to manually create a meeting that had a static address.
Yeah.
Because our emergency response team has that exact same problem. And the only answer I could give them is make a meeting that lasts 2 years.
Yep. I can't tell you, it's forehead to a brick wall. Yeah. There are a handful of those features and functions.
Can I comment?
Yes, Jason can comment. Yeah.
Yeah. So the policy there's in the I think it's set CS. What is it? Conferencing setting or something for the user. There's a parameter that says reset conference ID, and if you apply that to the user, and you run the command to get the conference ID for that user again, you'll see a static conference ID there. It's not supported to use it, so use at your own risk. But you can copy and paste that URL and have that person use it as a static, and it will never change.
Yeah,
and you don't
unfortunately, our security organization is worse than the DoD, so yeah, we don't have the option of turning it on. I'd be shot if I did that.
Fair enough. So again, there is plenty of crossfire discussing that topic, and I know there have been designs and thoughts around making it happen. Yes, feedback taken, put it in any mechanism we have, and add your name to the list. Much appreciated on that. What do you want? Would you like? He needs to have a mug. All right.
Question over there. Back.
And we're down to one ball. Question in the back, and then you two guys and you, and then we're good.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. A couple of questions. One is, I've written a lot of C# stuff to integrate other telephony systems in our organization. And I currently use the wrapper for PowerShell, so I can execute PowerShell commands from C#. Is there one that you guys recommend, and then one that works for Skype online?
Have we had two Stump the Nerds?
Obviously.
That hurts.
Sorry, I really need the information.
Come on down after class, and we'll see if we can find you the answer.
All right, and then CIFA utils. I use CIFA utils for NOAA.
That's a negative in the cloud, Ghost Rider.
Is there another tool similar to that?
That would be a negative, Ghost Rider. The pattern is full. Did I date myself? I think I'm good on that, right?
Good movie. That's too bad, because we really use the heck out of it. Okay.
This mic is on, right?
Thanks, yeah.
I love where I work. Uh-oh, down through. All right, I'm sorry, guys. Last questions.
And we'll be here after the session.
My question is more to the implementation of the custom policies. I was in a challenge 4 years ago that I had the need to implement a custom policy, and I was forced to choose between those predefined conferencing policies. And the question here is, was there any infrastructure-wise challenge which forced you as an implementation team to define a preset of policies and give not the admins the opportunity to create custom policies even 4 years ago?
You know, here's the thing. There is a notion that things can run away from you. And the idea of moving into the cloud is it's supposed to be, we're supposed to be limiting those choices by default, because we're supposed to be simpler across the board. That said, I think there's also challenges with understanding exactly what the customer wants in detail. And if we were to put all of the options that the customers wanted, We would have had to put thousands of policies out there, right? And instead of creating a custom policy engine that's built, this thing was built for speed and for performance, and one of the ways to do it would be to limit your choices, right? So I think only after 3 or 4 years and getting some time in the bank of how to make it work, did we think it was safe to go in the water of customization like that. What you're going to see now in Skype for Business Online, or I'm sorry, in Teams, is the next evolution of that. And we mentioned that in the deck. What you're going to see now in Teams is heavy customization and the ability to do all kinds of things you can't do in Skype for Business Online right now. It's built like that right out of the box, okay? It wasn't built like that. And you can see that all over the place. But that's the answer is Teams. And I know it's easy to kick the can down the road, but the answer really is Teams. We got an opportunity to build that darn product from the ground up without all the extra baggage, without all the history, all the evolutions of the product. We got a chance to start from the ground up, and it shows across the board. So that's the best answer I can give you, and you didn't stump us. The effort you spend to get into Teams is going to pay off in a big way. Okay? Thank you. Thank you. One in the back. Do we want to just
get a
We'll just get them done and we'll be done. Okay. So back in the corner.
Okay.
Patiently.
All right. So we have a hybrid situation, and we put the on-prem instance of Skype for Business in place because we, among other things, couldn't set the maximum followers to anything higher than 250 online or something like that.
Okay.
So we made it 1,000 or something on-prem. What's the maximum or what's the most optimum one that we could use online?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those settings that you can't modify online because that might have a quite, depending on the size of the deployment, a quite massive impact on the performance of the server side. And this is why that is one of the settings that you can't change. And I believe the default or the setting, the value that's set in online is 200, 250 for that one. And there's really not a lot you can do about that. From a configuration standpoint, that's more like a user behavior type thing.
Yeah, because our help desk folks despise that one. So, okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Last question.
So Microsoft hosts its original hosted meeting. And in this combination with customer policies, last year, Microsoft have problems to switch the customer policies to other tenants. And when we heard that Microsoft switched automatically the user accounts from Skype for Business to Teams, what was the customer policies? And in combination with original hosted meeting, so that's a special combination, but Microsoft hosts for enterprise customer, momentarily with whitelisting, yes, okay, but what's going on when a customer goes to original hosted meeting with customer policies, yet, and will switch next year to Teams? Well, also the customer policies transferred to Teams policies, or the customer lose the complete configs and must generate it now. Then we have the same problem we have when we switch tenants, and Microsoft do not the same.
You are accurate in your assessment, and that is something that is not solved, so to speak, for you guys to hear about yet. We're not ready to message that to you because as it stands, you would be building a new set of policies in Teams, and you would have your old set of policies in Skype, and you'll be doing that mapping, okay? And those policies in Teams may look different because they do different things in Teams, right? Whether it's codecs or content sharing and things like that, it works differently over here. And so they don't necessarily map one-to-one. It is going to be an IT exercise.
But I mean, to that point, I mean, it's not that we as Microsoft decide when the right time for you is to move over from Skype to Teams.
We're not going to be doing that.
That is something that you decide. We are not setting any date or anything like that. It's your decision to,
we're not going to do it automatically for you.
Yeah, I understand. But the thing is, kick Microsoft then these policies when the user are transferred to Teams in the backend, or copy Microsoft this information, and then we have the same problem as we had last year when the customer will switch to a new tenant and the policies are not there.
Yep.
No, so I mean, as part of your preparation to move from Skype to Teams, you need to go through this custom policy exercise again. Identify your personas, and the reason for that is that Teams provides more and additional capabilities, and you want to understand how do those features and capabilities map to your user personas, and modify and create custom policies for Teams that map to your personas. One of the input factors there will be Skype for Business policies, but that is something that you as an organization, all up, need to perform as part of your transition from Skype to Teams.
We're not going to move the users first and make you have to come back and sweep up the mess later.
Okay.
Okay. You should not expect that to be the design. Okay.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the way, we're going to figure out how to go into a. I mean, I'm just making this up, but go into an interface and go, this policy maps to this policy, and every user has this policy, now gets this policy. Okay, migrate me, right? Or whatever it's going to be if it's not a self-migration, okay? So we don't have the answer to that, but I can tell you everybody's being very, very, very cognizant of what we've done in the past and how we're going to be doing it going forward. I'm not going to say it's not going to be a rocky road, right? But things like that, you shouldn't expect to be oversights.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, you guys.
Thanks.